Welcome to Wired to Hunt's Rut Fresh Radio, bringing you the latest reports from the Whitetail Woods. And now, your hosts, Casey Smith and Tyler Jones.
This is Rut Fresh Radio, powered by Vortex Optics, and today we are talking to hunters from around the country, and the common theme seems to be taking care of family matters and finding hard mast. What's happening, y'all? This is Rut Fresh Radio, powered by Vortex Optics. Guess what, guys? It is hunting season almost everywhere right now. Like, October is here. This is what we like to affectionately call the pre-rut. That's exciting times, man. I love being to this time of the year. We're actually up in South Dakota right now, been hunting in Nebraska, and it actually is fall here. Back home in Texas, it's still summer. Like, my kids swimming in the backyard, like it's going down. But up here in the North Country, these deer are moving around, and it is exciting. Tyler Jones is also here with me. Tyler, what is happening, dude?
Oh, just, trying to chase deer around all over the country right now.
Yeah.
Actually, been up in Nebraska, we have, and we've had pretty good little chunk of success there.
Chunky.
I think it might even get better in the future. So, but yeah, we actually started that hunt. I had a rough hunt, man, and you were having the best runts. Had a runt,
runts and bunts.
You were having a bunt, best hunt. For me, I think the first two hunts that I had, I saw, let's say it was a morning and an evening. I had one deer. So I called that I was averaging a half deer per sit. I decided to be pretty aggressive and hunt, tree stand, hang saddles and be in trees basically on this hunt, at least early on, instead of glassing, trying to figure something out, right? You did a little more glassing type stuff and had more success overall on that trip.
I would call my strategy the ground and pound strategy, where I wasn't glassing to learn things for like 3 days later. It was like try to put eyes on deer and make moves on them in that sense. And it does what it always does. It produces encounters, but they have a much lower odds of success than whenever you hang in a tree, like what you were doing. It's strange how, like, if you're in a tree and you encounter a buck, there's a real good chance that you can get a shot. Whereas if you're on the ground doing that thing, there's a real good chance you mess it up real bad.
Yeah. So we employed different strategies early on there, and I think that was, part of the reason I struggled is I was trying to find. So I ended up actually doing what you were doing, and found deer. Saw quite a few deer that morning, but didn't see a shooter, and that was kind of the issue we were running into. Is like habitat's kind of limited where we were at and starting out, and I ended up finding deer but not a shooter, and that's what that's the issue there. Is your shooter may not be in a particular piece of cover, so now it's time to move 2 miles over and do something different and find a different piece and see if he's there. And so I was really kind of, running thin on optimism at the time. And you're over here just like having the time of your life, just boot spooking and doing all kinds of stuff.
I don't know if you would call it the time of your life, because I don't know. That depends on what you call the time of your life. That's a pretty deep concept, right? But one would say that what makes a good vocalist is dynamic range, and maybe that's how hunting goes too. Like a lot of dynamic range in the hunt, highs and lows, as a lot of people would say, right?
I'd say.
So that's definitely what I was experiencing. All this stuff that we're talking about here, guys, will be on the Meat Eater channel next summer. We're producing a whitetail travel type series, and that's what we're doing right now in South Dakota too. But
which, by the way, we killed 2 bucks.
We did,
but I can't tell you too much more. We're actually going to probably talk about that on our podcast here real soon, so you can jump over the element and listen to the story if you're interested.
And speaking of killing bucks, there's other success. In the Rut Fresh crew, as you would say, all right?
Oh, Marky Mark.
Marcus Kenyon has done it again. I think. He's killed more than one, right?
Yeah, well, this was his first buck.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a good first buck.
Yeah, it is.
So,
it is. Of the season, sorry.
Mark is going to talk about that on his main show too, but he killed an opening weekend buck in Michigan, and it's a nice deer.
It's a big deer,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, I was stoked for him. We're actually up here right now, and we're going to be hanging out some with Tony. You guys know Tony Peterson, probably, if you listen to this podcast, and we're going to do some South Dakota hunting together too and talk about that. That's going to be part of that same video series Casey was talking about that the Nebraska hunt will be on, and that'll be a 2023 thing. So you got something to wait on and look forward to. It's kind of like Christmas, just a little bit farther out, pretty much.
That's right. And guys, I know that it's an exciting time of the year. There's all kinds of things running around out there in your mind, tactics and all this, and it's actually a little cloudy because it's also the time of year that the influencer crowd tends to want to spit out a bunch of tips and tactics. Don't get too bogged down in that stuff.
Yeah.
Hunt your hunt. Look at what's going on around you. Perceive what the deer are doing and make moves to kill deer. And that's what Rut Fresh is all about, right? We talk to people from different parts of the country to try to hone in on maybe a pattern that you also might see that will help you kill deer, right? And optimism is high, but realism is important, right? This is actually the contrast that Tyler and Casey have. Casey's a little bit too much of an optimist. Tyler, I don't know if you can be too much of a realist because it is real, right?
Too much realism actually turns to a negative context sometimes, I think, or it's easy to do. So I can do that.
We balance each other out with like a conservative optimism pretty much, and it works out pretty good. So be optimistic, be excited about deer season, right? But don't go in there saying it's an 11 out of 10 on October 10th whenever you have a buck moving at 3 a.m. on your trail camera, right? That's not what it is. You're just excited. You know?
That's the thing is you definitely want to be, I don't know, FOMO is high this time of year because there are people killing deer. The thing is you got the right property, then the deer is just, he's just preseason hanging out on your property. If you don't have the right property, then you need to wait for the rut. That's what, plain and simple,
That's exactly right.
There are a few guys that we're going to talk to this week that have, I guess, the right property or they're on the right property, right? Michael Hunsucker from Heartland Bowhunter. You guys will hear about his Ohio buck. Your buddy Roy Strawn. Academy workers. He's out of Texas. He has a really interesting story as well for you this week. Matt Ross from the NDA. He's up in the New York area. For all you Northeasterners, he's gonna crush your hopes. And then Christian Babcock, our buddy from Oklahoma, has a really cool story of a big old toad buck that he shot. So hopefully this stuff will help you out a little bit.
Let's give him a little extra here, Tyler. So we've hunted Nebraska this week. Kind of give some of that like plain stuff. If you were to predict buck movement for Nebraska for the next week, what would you foresee it being like? And tell me why.
Well, we've got a cold front coming in, and I think that what it's going to do for these deer, they've had pretty hot weather, hot evenings especially. And what I have seen is that these deer are moving literally 10 minutes of shooting light left a lot of times. I think what you're going to get is that when these fronts push in, not only cold weather, but overcast evenings, which is going to make deer at least think that maybe it's later than it is, right? They're out there all the time, so they're not easily fooled in that. But there is a couple of minutes there that can help you out if you're, needing some extra time. That deer that you've seen is coming, late. He's coming right after shooting light. So I would say scale of 1 to 10, based off of what my hunt was, I would say we're looking at probably somewhere in the 5 range with that weather coming in because it's going to change patterns and it's going to make them move. You just gotta find them, and that's what I was struggling to do.
Yeah, I think that was exactly the number I was going for, too, kind of right in the middle, man. Middle America, middle numbers. That's what Nebraska is.
That's it.
Yeah.
Crossroads of America.
That's right. Food sources are still going to be huge. It's a dry year up here in the plains, so find water, find food, and you will find bucks. And I would say mornings still. I think that overall I saw better action in the mornings. I think that a lot of the deer are holding tight to bedding until the sun goes down. That can change, like you were saying, though, with some cooler temps, some overcast weather. It could get really, really nice. And guys, like I want us to be real about what these numbers mean to us, at least. A 5 is a really good number for whitetail hunting. Like, the best rut day of my life was probably a 9. And that's so like you can't personally. I can't throw out a 7 or 8 very, with much conscience because it's a little bit, those are kind of like sacred numbers, you know what I mean?
It's getting up there pretty high right
Getting up there high. So feel good about a 5.
Yeah, for sure. We've got some 7 or 8s in this forecast for you. So let's listen to these guys tell us why you should be out in the woods. Okay, on the phone now, we've got Michael Hunsucker from Heartland Bowhunter. Michael, you've been in Ohio recently and you've had some success. Is that right?
Yeah. I just got back a couple days ago, day before yesterday.
Well, so how'd this hunt go down? It looked like it was a different kind of habitat or different type of country than you normally are hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, it was a hunt that we did a giveaway with Trophy Rock and the guys at Redmond Hunt, and so we had a hunt winner that won the giveaway, and we got them all outfitted, and we were basically going to do this hunt in Ohio. So we chose to do opening week out there in Ohio, and some of the Redmond guys, live out there in that area and have been hunting in that area. And so they have a few different properties that they hunt. And it's kind of in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, kind of in southeast Ohio there. And so it was pretty cool. It was unique for me, just different than what I've hunted before. I've only hunted Ohio one time before. Mm-hmm. But a lot of what reminded me of being from Missouri was hunting like down at the Ozarks, in the Ozark Mountains, as we call them here. So just a lot of steep terrain, a lot of timber. And for early season, that can be extremely difficult. And it proved to be, especially starting out. Just acorns dropping everywhere, and deer didn't really have to go far. They love those acorns, even though they're not the most nutritional.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a common scenario a lot of hunters run into, where it's feast or famine with acorns, where there's either just one good feed tree and it's awesome, or there's so many that you can't really target a specific spot. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, so for us, it was, it was a pretty one of the areas that was not affected by drought much. So really good acorn crop, it seemed. So the red oaks and the white oaks alike were both dropping like crazy. And so, we hunted the first few days. I always try to be, I'm a pretty cautious whitetail hunter. I don't like just like bombing in and, just hiking around in the woods looking for an acorn tree, and bumping deer. I'm just not a fan of that. I kind of like to, start off easing my way in. And so that's kind of what we did. And we just weren't seeing the deer. And we hunted they had some small food plots, and I'm talking small, half acre, quarter acre, little clearings in the woods. And so, we realized that, like, okay, like if we're not seeing the deer here, they're not making it to the food plot before dark. There's got to be an acorn deal. And so, we ended up doing a little bit of that, kind of just on the boots on the ground scouting. And, we found some spots, but we ended up doing a hanging hunt on a big acorn flat that we found, and just didn't see the deer. We just didn't see the movement that we were hoping. So, it just kind of got to the point to where we were kind of scratching our heads.
So at that point, how'd you end up finishing this thing off?
So, at just about the point in time where I was, questioning if this is ever going to work out, we actually had our very first stand that we hung was on a ridge top, basically, I don't know, a quarter mile from this food plot. And it was a good terrain feature. I was looking at the 3D version of Onyx on the web browser, and you could see, you could exaggerate the terrain even on there. And so you could really see these little saddles and these ridges. And we hung a set on this ridge that kind of transitioned from a couple of different food plots. Basically, there was 2 food plots, and there was a road system that kind of led to this ridge. Well, I had a camera that I put on this old logging road below the ridge, below the stand that we hung. I checked that camera, and the biggest deer that we have had pictures of, and they were running cameras before we got out there. But the biggest deer that we'd had pictures of was on that camera 2 nights in a row. And the first night was after dark, like 30 minutes after dark. And then the second night was like 30 minutes before, or right at sunset, so 30 minutes before shooting time. So we were all pumped and got all excited and hunted that stand for 2 days straight and did not see the deer.
Oh, man.
So we're like, Just like it was the typical like roller coaster of bow hunting, right? I mean, just like we were pumped to get there, got excited, didn't see anything. We're kind of like, okay, we're kind of in the low, like this kind of sucks. This is gonna be a tough hunt. Then you get the trail cam pictures, we're all excited, and then no, don't see anything. But as we had hunted that other stand the last few days, the buck I ended up killing daylighted in the food plot that we had hunted earlier in the hunt. And so I was like, okay, like this is it. Tomorrow's our last day. Like, let's see if we can get this deer killed. You know, will he come back in the daylight a second day? Who knows? But it's a pretty secluded food plot, like on top of the ridge, like back in the timber. So it's like, you know, close to bedding, close to plenty of acorns and stuff. So the only problem was the wind was sketchy. And so I was just like, man, I just don't like we had a stand on the food plot already. And I was like, I know that's not going to work. Literally completely opposite, wrong wind. And I was like, we could hang on the opposite side of the food plot. It's a small food plot, so literally 100 yards away. And the wind is still going to be marginal at best. But if they come from the direction I think the bucks were coming, like it might work. We'll see if the wind doesn't swirl, right? I mean, that's like the the thing about that area, like with the terrain, is like literally swirly as it gets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Man, that's awesome. So you ended up shooting an awesome deer there, man, and had a great time, I'm sure. Sometimes the challenging hunts are like that, man. They're tough when you're there, but after you look back at it, you're like, man, that was awesome. That's why we do this, you know, to challenge ourselves. So, you know, if
Absolutely.
Based off of what you saw there and how your experience went and what you think, you know, the future weather patterns or whatever look like there, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you feel like next week would be? Would it be even better, or do you think it'd be tougher?
You know, I think it's gonna be a little bit tougher early next week. The weather is not looking the greatest, and so it's gonna be a little bit warmer the first early part of the week. But there is a good cold snap coming, and so you know, I would say if you only have a certain amount of time to hunt, I would key in towards that later part of the week. But that being said, the deer are moving. I mean, they're moving in daylight, and they're, you know, I think it's going to be good. That cold front and those, you know, early October cold fronts can be money if you kind of just be patient and wait for the right time. So I would say the end of next week, I'd put her at probably an 8.
Woo,
oh yeah,
8, baby. That's good, man. That gets me hyped. That's cool, dude. Well, appreciate the time, Michael, and I hope you have a great rest of the season, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
On the phone now, we've got Matt Ross. He is the Director of Conservation for the NDA. Matt, what's happening, dude?
What's going on, Casey? I'm doing pretty good up here in New York.
Oh, well, it is a little rainy here. We're in South Dakota trying to chase some deer around, but I know you've been chasing around a few deer there in New York, and you always have the tabs on the deer, right? So by profession, you are a wildlife biologist, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so what is going on in the deer woods right now, man?
Well, where I live and work out of the Northeast. I've hunted New Hampshire, Massachusetts when I was living there, but right now I'm in New York State, across most of the Northeast anyway. Fall is full on effect. I mean, we're seeing leaves changing and food sources are changing. What deer are doing is they're changing. Mm-hmm. This is a major time when their food availability is a major shift, and people start seeing changes in what deer are doing, and they're really starting to focus on those changes of food. A lot of it is hard mast availability. Some of it's soft mast. This is when they're getting off of forbs and trying to find those fruits, either hard fruits or soft fruits. Deer hitting acorns, the ones that are dropping, beech nuts in some cases where you got beech. And there was a lot of early drop of apples this year. Across the Northeast, lots of apples were coming down early, and so they're focusing on that.
So for a guy from Texas, what is early for apples?
What is early for apples?
Yeah.
Well, right now, like we're starting to see some of the apple varieties already starting to hit the ground. That seems kind of early, you know. So a lot of the wild apple trees will drop in September and early October across the Northeast. But there are some persistent varieties out there. I mean, I don't know all the names of the different apple trees, but the ones that are in the wild, but occasionally you'll find trees that'll hold later, but most of them will drop early this time of year.
Yeah. So you actually had some success recently, and I'm interested in knowing if this was an apple deer or otherwise.
No, it was an acorn beech nut deer. Our season just opened, Tyler, this past weekend on Saturday. So I haven't really spent a lot of time afield, but I have got luck first set, hour and a half into the first set. Deer have been filtering through the woods, feeding on these acorns and some beech nuts, and I knew that they were. I have a camera out there. And a doe family group came through, 3 to 4 individuals. Tried to shoot the big mammoth doe that I've been trying to kill a couple of years, but she was on to me, and I just took what was presented. So killed a nice 3.5-year-old doe on Sunday morning.
That's awesome, dude. Congrats.
Thank you very much. The kids were able to help track and do all the things because it was right behind the house.
Man,
dude, that's fun. So is that something like a perennial pattern that you see there behind the house, and you can kind of always plan on targeting that, hard mast there in early October?
Yep. Yeah, and I only really have about 2 weeks to do it. Usually about mid-October, they completely abandon that pattern. And so I had to hit it hard and fast. So my plan, and the weather's not bad this time of year. We actually had a freeze warning last night, but it didn't get that cold. But in about 2 weeks, they really do abandon the back of our property, and they shift to a different part. So I'm glad I got it done.
Yeah, it's awesome, dude. Congrats. Yep. You got meat for the fall now, and I would imagine that some focus after fulfilling that task would shift to bucks, correct?
Correct. And I've been paying attention to your foibles and journey that you guys had some success. So congrats to both of you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, dude. It's a weird time of year because bucks are holding tight, but if you can get on them, man, it's fun. So now looking forward to what you have going on, say the next week there in New York, as maybe some of these apples start to drop and the hard mast might start to kind of dry up. What do you predict buck movement to be like going forward here? If you can, give me like a rating from 1 to 10.
It's still going to be pretty low on movement. You're not going to start. You won't see some of the activity where their home range, blows up, and you start seeing a lot more visibility. In fact, this is the time of year they get more reclusive, or at least it feels like they're becoming more nocturnal or going underground. Part of it's food. Testosterone is starting to go up. My plan is to continue to try to focus on where they're bedding, but where they're bedding closer to those new food sources. So abandon everything that you saw late summer and the probably September weeks, and really try to go to where the food is now, and then look for the closest bedding to that. Food now up here is, again, those fruits I just talked about. And bedding would be probably more of like your woodland swamps, cutovers, those kinds of places. We've done some even age timber management on one of the properties that I like to hunt. And so those are 2-year-old clear cuts. The deer are going to still bed in those and just filter out and try to hit those acorns or apples.
Cool. So awesome. 1 to 10, what do you think?
2.
A 2. All right. That's low. Honestly, man, I appreciate some realism here.
Yep.
I think guys tend to get kind of excited, and they always want to throw out these high numbers because season is starting. But, that really is probably a pretty good number to look at there. So appreciate the information, Matt. I hope you have a great rest of the season, and good talking to you, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great talking to you.
On the phone, we've got Roy Strawn. He has been hunting in Texas. Roy, how's it going, man?
Man, it's great. We're headed back to the house now with a couple coolers full. I got my little boy finally passed out after the first couple hours of the drive, so we're doing real good here.
That's cool, man. So big time in Texas this weekend. It was the archery opener. So a lot of guys hit the woods or the hills or whatever you want to call it. And you were one of those fellas that got to go out and do a little hunting this weekend, right?
Yes, sir. We hit the hill country this weekend, and the highways were packed on Friday, Thursday evening, and Friday. Getting everybody was heading out. So you couldn't ask for better weather. We had, I think we were out towards Spicewood on far west Travis County, and we saw temps in the low 50s and then highs in the low 80s during the day. So, I mean, just absolutely gorgeous October weather for Texas. So great for an archery opener for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So you have a little place out there that y'all get to hunt, and I know that the hill country can be a little challenging sometimes because it's a little bit like feast or famine, like where depends on acorns and water and all kinds of stuff. But what are the conditions like out there as far as for the deer?
So we hunt a small spread that's attached to several other tracts, anywhere from 6 to 1,200 acres, and it's kind of a haven, if you will. But lots of hill country oaks, lots of cedar, lots of mesquite, and very, very dry. We hunt a piece that butts up to the Pedernales and the Colorado River, where they come into make Lake Travis, and so there's a little bit of water nearby. But by all means, I mean, you're still up against, pretty much drought conditions. We've supplemented that with a lot of protein and cottonseed through the spring and summer. I think that helped us quite a bit. One thing that I do think as far as deer movement that's been really strange this year is running both conventional and LTE cameras. We've had virtually no does that we've seen until about 2 weeks ago. They're still very nocturnal, the does are, but we've had no does on camera during the day, about anywhere from midnight to 2 o'clock in the morning. We just started seeing them. And then last night I had a doe come in still during daylight, one by herself. And other than that, I mean, it's kind of strange, but I don't know if that's in relation to the drought or what, but typically where you see quite a few, we just hadn't had any on camera.
So what do you assume is the reason that they're showing up all of a sudden? Usually you think of bucks this time of year start dispersing and going to different areas because of the rut. Is it a food thing, or why are they showing up all of a sudden as does?
Tyler, I think that's something, that's kind of the theory I'm working, is that, the does that I have seen during the day, just out looking at other pieces of property in the area, have all had young yearlings with them. Seen a lot of twins. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if they're holding to food sources tighter, knowing that it's a little scarcer than we've seen in years past. But about 2 miles down the road from where we were hunting this weekend, I saw a group actually this morning. It was about 6 or 7 does, and probably about 4 of them. There were 3 mature does and 4 yearlings, I would say. One of them had twins, and they were all together, not a buck in sight. So it's definitely interesting compared to years past.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier some full coolers, and I'm assuming that was meat and not liquid drinks, but I know that since you're not seeing very many does, that has to mean that there is a buck involved somewhere in this, man. Tell us the story about this hunt.
So we've actually had a very large bachelor group at 2 of our locations. Yesterday morning, I hunted. It was absolutely beautiful morning. And I had seven bucks at the feeder. Both our shooters that we were looking for. We had 3 that we're looking for, and then 2 that we were going to call I guess would be more of our management bucks. But we had all 3 of them or the two of the 3 shooters were there yesterday morning, and it was definitely a sight to see. I mean, that's 14 eyes on you, and trying to make a move in that is extremely difficult. So yesterday morning was not what happened. Yesterday morning wasn't ideal. Let's say that. We ended up shooting a buck yesterday morning, an absolute terrible miss. And what happened was the target buck, I was trying to shoot the deer we call Hightower. We've been chasing him for a couple of years. We've got him, we think he's a little over 7, and just absolute gorgeous deer, big gray hide, sway back, big full neck, and very tall, narrow rack. And his G2s, we think, are going to go 15 to 18 inches. Toad, absolute matured, one for the wall for sure. And so we were playing a game of cat and mouse yesterday, and finally he was a little leery of the hole in the blind. And so finally he looked away, and I drew, and I had him at 35 yards, and he had kind of circled back and stepped behind where he was standing. And there was a younger deer standing at his hip, and he had moved kind of behind him. And so I just assumed he was at 40 and dropped down, used my 40 pin. And when I let go of that arrow, I mean, hit the deck and just sailed right over his back and smoked the younger buck.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, just beautiful, beautiful shot. Absolute terrible, not the way the plan was supposed to go.
Yeah.
And so luckily it was a good shot. We recovered the deer. Totally not the deer we wanted to kill, but hey, we'll take it. And so luckily Travis County is a 2-buck county, and so I climbed back in the stand, licking my wounds that evening, and same stand, and not expecting much due to the death being around the smell of it. And so climb back in, and we hunt a little bit of so it's a developing area is what I'll say, and because of that you have to deal with a lot of noises that you wouldn't typically deal with in the deer woods. And so what happened was there's a bar and grill, I don't know, probably about a half mile away on the water on the lake. And they had a great live band last night. They were playing all kinds of great tunes. And so we, and of course it's echoing through the canyon of the lake. And then some guy on a neighboring ranch decided that Sunday was for target practice, and he's out there just burning up ammo like there's no tomorrow. And I was just sitting there thinking to myself, I mean, I might as well go back to the house and watch college football. And so what ended up happening is I figured, well, we'll sit here, and if anything, it'll be an absolute last minute, last few minutes of daylight, and maybe something will come in. And our guy quit shooting, and it got real quiet, and you could still hear the music off in the distance. And then out walked a pretty mature doe, and I was pretty shocked. And by all means, I was getting ready to make a shot on her, and so I got my bow up on my knee and was knocked up, and she kept looking back to the brush, real nervous. And I was like, we all know what that means. And so I said, well, hold on a minute. And so my shot from my seat to the feeder area is 20 yards on the dot. And she's milling around, and then boom, out bumps this one of the younger, real attractive bucks we've had on camera, but he needs a few more years. And I'm like, oh, well, hey, little guy. And of course they've all been running together. So I'm waiting, and then boom, out steps. We have a 8-point that he's an 8, but he's big Mast deer and just solid throughout, very consistent in his mast, big body. And we have him we're saying he's a little over 6. And I mean, he's just very mature looking deer on the hoof. And I had seen him yesterday morning too, and when I saw him, he was much more impressive in person than he had been on camera, which is always great. And so he steps out, none the wiser, and he's milling around eating, puts his head down, and it's a stand and fill feeder. So he puts his head down and walks behind the feeder. And of course, he can't see me at all. And so I've come to full draw, and we still have some protein left in our protein feeders. And so he sticks his nose up in there, and he's kind of slightly quartered away the way the feeder sits. And I let a jackhammer fly, and I mean, just absolutely perfect, quartered away right behind his shoulder, pass through, and he jumps and mule kicks. And you got that, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but you can hear, you know how it sounds when they, good shot, goes through both sides, arrow disappears, and he mule kicked so big that his butt started coming over his shoulders.
Oh, man.
And he kind of stumbled and then fell and took off
That's
into
awesome.
the brush. And as soon as the dust settled, it's super dry, so there's dust everywhere. And I grab my binoculars, and I'm looking, and I can see my arrow. And from my blind, I can see just blood all over the arrow. And I'm shaking, and you know, that's what's so great is I'm in there shaking like a leaf on a tree and super pumped, knowing I just smoked this deer. And so I don't even waste any time. I get down, I go over there, look at the arrow, and just, you can tell. And I even I had a little humble video I made on Instagram and of the bloody arrow, and it's just great. And so I saw where he ran, so I made a few steps, and there's just a beautiful blood trail. It's the hill country, so there's lots of rock, and which is great because you can just see the trail through the rock. And we end up getting down there and he wasn't 20 yards from where I hit him, and didn't go 20. And,
That's awesome, man. Congrats on that, dude. That's so cool. So
yeah, and it was great. So recovered him quick, and he was heavy, very, very heavy.
Awesome,
yeah, dude. He's a good-looking buck, man. I understand it's not social official right now, so we're kind of getting the pre story on this thing. So that's cool, man. Congrats on that deal. I know having the family out and everything is a big deal for you. So whenever you kind of look at what's coming forward in Texas for the next week or so, as far as weather goes and conditions and all that, if you had to rank what you predict the buck movement to be like within the next week, what would you say that is between a 1 and a 10?
Man, I think, to be honest, I think we'll probably be somewhere between a 6 and a 7.
It's pretty good.
There's some talk of some more weather coming. I think right now, the younger bucks we saw especially the one I killed yesterday morning, he was a little wet in his tarsal already. I mean, the hill country kicks off super early as far as rut goes. Usually you get about 2, maybe 3 weeks if you're lucky into October, and you get a little cold snap, and those guys they'll separate real fast and spread. And
cool.
That's just what I've seen in my area, but it's always been that way. I know growing up, if it was cold during Halloween, the rut was already over in the hill country.
Yeah. Well, cool, man.
That's awesome stuff,
that's my
dude.
2 pennies.
Yeah, man, that's good stuff. We appreciate the from the field info that you got there, man, and congrats on the bucks.
Yeah, man. Thank you, guys. It was a lot of fun for sure. I got to have my family with me for the laying down picks, and that's just makes it all that much more special.
Now we're talking to Christian Babcock from Hunter's Advantage. Dude, you have had some really awesome success here recently. In Oklahoma, it looks like just a toad buck. Tell us about that, man.
Yeah, no. Hey, I was thinking about it the other day. This is the earliest buck that I've killed by about 2 weeks. Opening day buck is not the normal for me. But yeah, no, had an awesome hunt down in Southwest Oklahoma on a property we set it up in the summer, left it alone, and it is weird. Mature bucks do move when you stay out of the property. So it was just a great hunt.
That's cool, dude. So you left it alone after you set it up. You think that's a key? That sounds like you're thinking that's a key piece of this whole equation.
I think it is. I think for most people, I used to be one of them, are anxious to check trail cameras, do all these habitat improvements, and sometimes it's best to just let deer be deer. And when you leave them alone, and it just seems like good results. I've shot a buck the first sit on that property the last 2 years. One was a 7.5-year-old buck, and this one was a 6.5-year-old buck. So
wow,
they move in daylight if you leave them alone.
So is this a deer that you have some history with?
I do. He was a 5.5-year-old buck last year, and never got an encounter with him. I actually tagged out in Oklahoma, and he started showing up in daylight right after that. He's probably a mid-140s buck last year, and 11, and ended up sprouting to a 13 this year. And
wow,
I think I got him at his peak. He's a pretty cool buck.
Yeah, dude, that's beautiful. So this area of the country you're talking about is kind of diverse in habitat. What's the general habitat of the area that you're hunting there?
Yeah, it's interesting because you got the Wichita Mountain Range, which is peaking and awesome, beautiful to look at. But then the stuff I'm hunting is flat as crap.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's like you're sitting by the highest stuff in the area, and then I'm also sitting on this flat ag land that's just 9 foot of native grasses. So that's kind of what it lays out and looks like.
Oh, no wonder there's giants there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So what was the pattern that this buck was on?
Man, it was awesome. He had been coming in 14 days in a row since mid-September, morning and evening. And I was just kind of, joking back and forth with my buddies. I was like, watch this. October 1, he'll stop. They know. He'll figure it out. And about 7:15, I'd been in the stand, got an hour before shooting light just because I did not want to booger him. And he showed up 7:15. So he read the script, and it worked out.
Yeah. So what is the key to setting up in the way of deer out there?
Man, I'm a bedding guy. I think there's a lot of different strategies you could use in there. A lot of people hunt wheat, hunt transition areas between bedding and wheat. I don't have any wheat or food on my property. I do run some corn.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just hunting real close to the bedding. Bedding is a limited resource in the place that I'm hunting. So I get up in there chilly. And so I try to wait for the best wind, the most favorable wind conditions, get in early, and try to stay still. That's kind of been my recipes for success.
Dude, that's awesome. So this buck is just a big old heavy, nasty 13-point, 6.5-year-old deer. He's got, looks like to me his neck's already swelling pretty good. How close to rut action are these deer right now?
I don't know. I mean, I think we're still a little ways off. Weirdly enough, he had some velvet still on his faces.
Wow.
So it was, he's the definition of an early season buck. I think we still got 2-3 weeks in this area of the country until we're starting to see a little bit more of that big buck activity as far as a lot of rubs, a lot of scrapes. There's some community scrapes on this property, and they haven't really been that open. So I'm just waiting for that activity. I think we're still a few weeks out.
Yeah. Sure. So this is a property that you've monitored for quite a few years, and so it seems like you kind of have the calendar down as to what goes on here. Looking at the conditions we have ahead, it's been pretty hot, but things are starting to change a little bit, and just some of the knowledge you have from seasons past, what do you predict buck activity to be like over the next week? And give us a rating, like from 1 to 10.
Yeah, so a couple different things. On this property, I'm thinking I'm that mid-range. I'm thinking a 4 or 5 in the next couple of weeks. We're still seeing highs in the mid to high 80s. I got a sunburn trying to track this deer.
Yeah.
So I did not enjoy that, but we're actually headed up to Kansas later part of this week and seeing some lows dropping from the mid 50s down to the high 30s. So where I'm hunting in the next week, I'm going to give that about a 7 or an 8. But where I hunted on this particular buck, I'd say about a 5, 4 or 5.
Gotcha. Well, that's cool. It's promising, man. The up and up is coming. We're getting close to November. And, man, I appreciate you hopping on the phone with us. Congrats on the big buck, and we will talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys.
I hope y'all have a great opening week of deer season for many of the states out there. If you want to get hype about some deer hunting, we just released a new video on the Element channel that is all about South Dakota hunting from last year. Lots of big bucks going down there. Also, be sure and check out the latest episode of Deer Country with Mark Kenyon over on the Meat Eater YouTube channel. And if you want to see something you might encounter this year, go check out Tony Peterson's most recent article about blood trailing deer on wiredtohunt.com. This has been Rut Fresh Radio. Y'all keep it fresh.